Hello, YouTube. Today I wanted to show you a Frosty Dex build, but there was a problem, or maybe a boon. It turned into an offhand hatchet build, which of course focuses on Dex and uses Frost most of the time. Now, I have never really used an offhand axe. I've talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to show it to you. So we're using the Guardian Sword Spear, we're doing the jump and heavy into the follow-up light attack that is a true combo, and then of course offhand hatchet for a little bit of synergy. I don't believe any of it is necessarily a combo, but it's nice to have a close range, wide sweeping attack just at the ready, just something a little quick. A dagger can do this. A hatchet has slightly more range than the dagger, of course. And if you're comparing this Icerind Hatchet that I'm using to, say, the regular hatchet with a cold infusion, the hatchet will do slightly more damage with the amount of dexterity I have, and of course the amount of int I have, which is nothing. The Icerind Hatchet or axe has a little more range than the hatchet, the regular old hatchet, I should say. And it's about a head of the blade of the axe taller, I should say. At least looking at them, comparing them side by side. I don't know about the hitboxes, I didn't go into the frame data, but it was fun to use. I was able to get the jumping R2 into R1 combo with the Guardian Sword Spear, which historically I've always had horrible luck trying to get, and I know if you're good you don't need luck, but sometimes trying to do a very specific combo, especially if the other player is somewhat savvy, they might see it coming. Then they can, of course, just have a little bit better movement. They might play around it. Hard to land the combo sometimes, though it is easier to land than certain other combos. But still, being able to heavy into light like that, and if they're already frostied, they take the bonus damage from having the resistances lowered thanks to the frost debuff. It felt pretty good. It was a strong setup. I rather liked it. I liked being able to get into people's faces with the hatchet when needs be. And of course, as I progressed, I started playing with the hatchet with other builds. It was so funny. It was just supposed to be a cold infusion dexterity flavored build. That's it. I was probably going to play it just like I did any other dex build just about, but using cold because I haven't used it a whole lot, and turns out offhand hatchet kind of fun. Of course, if people are latent, you might get them ghost hits, but hey, the nice thing about the ghost hits with Frost is that they keep a debuff, and when you do manage to make hits, which it feels like RNG getting through that latency sometimes, you'll do bonus damage. So that's nice. I really like that. Lots of fun. And characteristic of your standard dex build, you do get access to the great bow if you have enough strength, and you can hit people with a rain of arrows around the corner and make the fight infinitely more manageable. I really like this build. Most of the time when I play a dex build, I'm kind of not terribly enthused with them. Just something about the weapon choice just never really, I don't know, it didn't call to me. It's not like a strength build where I just am excited to use every weapon in the repertoire, and that's just a matter of personal taste. But something about the way this build worked together, it felt a little chunkier. From the external view, you probably wouldn't think it was a stereotypical dex build. And I only say that because when I think dex build, I think curved swords, I think lightning infusion, I think Nagakiba katanas, things like that. Not axes and pole arms, not necessarily at least. So I really like this version of the Dexterity Boy, and I think I'm going to play with it a little more. I'm curious what other setups with the hatchet will be nice to have, in my opinion. I'll go into a little more detail on it later. Oh, did you see that guard break? Oh man, I love guard breaks to this day. I think Dark Souls 3 did that to me. Breaking people's guard is just one of the best things. It feels so good. It's like a crit that's easier to get. Well, it is a crit, and it is easier to get than, say, a parry. Anyway, back to the point I was going to disregard very quickly here. I was going to say, crouch attack with the Zweihander into offhand hatchet. I don't know if it's a true combo. I need to play with it a little more, especially against people with my sort of bracket of internet connection. Good connections, I should say. And see if that's a combo, because I know crouching R1 into offhand dagger combos. And that's a neat little combo. Get a little extra oomph with your crouch attacks, you know. Kind of neat. Especially on a dex build where you don't need to two-hand your weapon for the big damage anyways. But the hatchet might be fast enough. I don't know. I got a few clips later on that are convincing-ish, but it's not science. It's not known. Maybe those people were dumb, and we'll look at that a little later. Back to the Icerind Hatchet, I always liked the idea of the Icerind Hatchet and the Frozen Needle Rapier. I liked the idea of dexterity weapons that have the frost damage on them, but they don't add the the int scaling to a weapon. And don't get me wrong, being able to add int scaling to weapons is good for those hybrid builds. It's nice for the pure martial builds who need a little utility or variety in their damage types. It's a good thing that it's there. But I really liked those weapons that just had the damage type on them and didn't require any int investment. Because when I was putting the build together and trying to figure out how am I going to do an int, or sorry, how am I going to do a dex cold build? Do I put some points into int to get a little extra magic damage, or do I just go all into dex and kind of deal with it and hope that the bonus damage fuels me all the way? Oh, I like this little clip here. It's pretty clean. This poor guy, he lost his phantom right as I arrived, but that heavy into light, and then we follow him, and we follow up with that hatchet. Oh, that mix-up. I just find that people don't know what to do against the small axe, and when you use it sparingly but you have it available, that's when it works really well. Oh, before I get to my next point, check out this incredibly latent hit. Not those, though those are part of it. I wonder where those axe hits went, but that one, nothing. And then I try to counter hit, and then he dies suspiciously. I played foolishly, and I should have realized he was incredibly latent. Or maybe that's packet loss? I don't know the terminology exactly, but the hit registering that late is just something from another realm entirely. But I was talking about Zweihander into Hatchet, and so we have one coming up here. I'm going to bully these guys a little bit. When I don't know, it's hard not to just soften people up with the great bow. I find I win the invasions a little more readily when I abuse the great bow, and it's hard not to. It just gets in free damage, makes them use some of their resources, makes them angry, make them not play so smart, and so I can do neat things like this, like crouch, hatchet. And I don't know if he didn't dodge. He might not have. There was a weird delay there. I don't know exactly, but I get another one later, maybe two others later. Oh, I think this clip might actually include it as well. Oh, so good of editing Gunches to put these clips in sequence so that when I'm just talking about the footage on screen, it's all relevant. It's very nice. But I want to know, is the crouching R1 into offhand hatchet, is it a combo? Because I know the hatchet, Icerind Hatchet, or the Icerind Axe, and the regular hatchet have a unique moveset, kind of like how the Warped Axe and the Ripple Axe have their own unique moveset, and then all the other battle axes have their own moveset that they all share. I want to know. I want to know if it's a combo with the Hatchet moveset and the R1 Zweihander. Because we're able to take him out pretty cleanly there. It looks to me like a crouching R1 into L1 combo, but I don't genuinely know. I want to know. It's cool. I like it. I like the idea of axes having a place in modern-day Elden Ring. Because the axe moveset, I don't know if you've played with axes a whole lot compared to a lot of other weapons, they don't feel the best. They got short range, they don't really creep forward with their attacks, the damage is okay, the most notable exceptions are like the Ash of War on the Stormhawk axe, Sleep Grease on the Ripple axe, and maybe an Ash of War on the Warped axe if you got a great strength build. And those aren't necessarily the core axe moveset necessarily, except for, of course, the Ripple axe just abusing a status to a really strong status to be able to deal good damage to people. So I like the idea of an offhand axe, and maybe it might have a place in Elden Ring. Will it be meta? Probably not. But it's cool. I like the look of it. It definitely is a look, to say the least. But look at that hit. Oh, another hit that just disappears. But we're going to watch him. Watch that host. Pop. I don't know what that was all about. Those latent hits, I'm going to start pointing them out. I don't know. They're funny to me. And I should be doing a little more with my editing, expanding my horizons, even if it's simple things. But, you know, when people are this latent and it's hard to get hits, rain of arrows. And then bully their phantom. That's what you're supposed to do. If they're latent, hit them with something big and something that the latency is not too dependent on. Oh, I love this little fight. It's a duel between greatswords, and I think it really shows off what the Zweihand or offhand hatchet is capable of. And it takes me a moment to kind of get into the groove of things, because you're fighting another greatsword. Normally you can trade with people fairly well with a colossal, but this guy, he's using probably Braggart's Roar or Warcry, and so he has the R2 into R1 combo. I think it's a true combo too, and I'm foolish and I get there halfway between the moveset. At least I didn't take the first part. And so he is big threat. If he catches me with that R2 into R1, it could delete me, especially if I don't stay topped off. But the nice thing is that I have this offhand hatchet, which means I can swing and get in free hits and kind of look for little whiff punishes here and there. It may not be as quick as, say, the dagger or have as much range as, the clean wrought sword, some light rapier. But it's in that sort of middle area where I like that it has a sweep and not a poke. And I get it, pokes are really good, but sweeps help where the tracking fails, in my opinion. However, at the end of the day, it might just well be that everything I want the hatchet to be in the offhand can easily be done by an offhand curved sword, so this might all be a moot point. But that's kind of the neat thing about Elden Ring and Souls games in general, is they are the IKEA of video games. You can get away with a lot of experimentation and just have fun with the plethora of ingredients that are laid out before you. Back to the duel, stamp upward cut to change the dynamic, and then we can hatchet in his face, get 3 hits, even though there was a 4th in the middle there that missed, and finish him off with a running heavy or running light attack. And I liked how the hatchet just chipping at him close range when he's trying to get away. It worked really well, and that might be something to look into. Because I believe it's the crouch poke into panic roll stamp uppercut hits. I've gotten it to hit a good handful of times. It seems fairly reliable if you think your opponent is going to panic roll. And so I wonder how good a hatchet will be as a wake up, because it's quick, it sweeps. If they roll a way you don't quite expect, the sweep might compensate. The range is lacking, of course. But then you can, of course, follow up with a running running light attack that does its own kind of grinding on the ground sweep. And look at me rambling far too much. We had a whole invasion in the time it took me to conclude my thoughts on the matter. I couldn't help it. But the Greatsword's also a good pick for, the Knight's Greatsword's a good pick for a frosty dexterity sort of build. It's a Dex Greatsword fundamentally. You can use it on strength build if you want to. It's a pretty long Greatsword. Has that jumping light that has a good chance of hitting both hits. And of course, Piercing Fang might catch the panic roller. You never know. This guy threw me off. I was playing against what I felt like were average to high-end players, and then just to fight this guy who is the R1 spam king, I should have realized it sooner. It took me far too many failures to realize, this guy's just going to hit if I'm in range. He's just going to mash it. I should have realized that far sooner. What's wrong with me? And thankfully I did eventually realize it, and I start abusing Hoarfrost Stomp to see if I can get him to play a little differently, because I didn't like trying to deal with curved greatsword hit priority at point blank. I know, skill issue on my part, but it ended up just killing the poor guy. Oh man, I've gone on so many tangents. But one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm almost out of time, is if I were to redo this build, and I'm just talking about the core build, not necessarily offhand hatchet here, I would have a set of weapons that are cold infused that I like, that I think can get multiple hits off and get the frost proc off. And then I would have duplicates of those weapons, either in keen or lightning variants. I don't know which would perform better, but something that's just the pure damage route necessarily. Because once somebody is frostbitten, because I don't really have an instat, the cold infusion's not doing a little extra work for me. Just a little food for thought should you decide to do a frosty build of your own. And watch this, host. Oh man, I feel so bad. Some more Ice Storm, get a few hits off on one of the Phantoms. Host kills himself off the cliff. What a shame. I wanted a whole war, and I didn't really get as many opportunities to use some more Ice Storm as I would have liked. I've sped up the footage in front of you because we have some spell spammers, and it's just the situation where with the gravity attacks and with all of the projectiles coming at me, it was incredibly difficult to find an in. So for your viewing pleasure, I have kind of sped past the bland parts where it's just spacing, macro spacing, and finding an opening to show you a few extra hatchet hits after a curved greatsword. That might also be a synergy, because I know curved greatsword with offhand dagger also works pretty darn well. I have played with it myself. I quite like it. Maybe a hatchet can do something similar. Maybe a normal curved sword can do something similar. Offhand weapons, something I need to explore more, because it feels like the pick of choice is an S-Talk or clean rod sword, and that's about it. Not a whole lot of variety. Every so often you'll see an oddball where they use a knife, you know, with a colossal sword or something, but it seems like clean rod sword is just everyone's pick. But these guys are so frustrating, and finally I switched to the great bow, and because spell spammers spam spells, he just kind of waits for me to peek up so he can lock on again, and then the fight's over, and they're both dead in an instant as soon as I just change what I'm doing, switch to Rain of Arrows. Oh my goodness, was that invasion frustrating. But anyone who's invaded for any length of time understands the spell spammers. And there's not a whole lot you can do up close in some situations. Sometimes it just takes that big spacing until you find ins, a lot of patience, hopefully they run out of blue juice, or maybe just outdistancing them and pulling out a ranged option. Every build should try to have a ranged option if it can, or at least any well-meaning build that wants to have utility. Look at that funky swap right there. I swapped to the Stormhawk Axe, do the Thunderstorm Ash of War, and for the first couple swipes, it has the Bloodhound Fang as my weapon swinging around my head. I haven't seen that before, and I've seen move swap glitches where, you know, people get one Ash of War to perform at the speed or with the animation of another. I've seen that nonsense. I've never seen a regular swap do something silly like that. It's kind of beyond me. Kind of look neat, though. I'd love a lightning-infused Bloodhound Fang. I don't like that it does bleed. It should do lightning instead. That's fine. I'm just joking. It don't matter. But hey, if you ever are really in a pinch and you hate people who do endure all the time, power stance straight swords. Not because you'll outtrade them, but because every time their endure goes down, maybe you could chip them for big damage. And once again, solving stalemates with the great bow. So many silly things we've learned today. If you have a stalemate, pull out a great bow. Hatchet might be good offhand. And perhaps many more lessons that I'm far too stupid to point out to you, dear viewer, but hopefully you noticed or realized or learned during the footage in front of you. And there's something funny about when you're having so much trouble with these guys who are indoor spamming, you know, working together, and then you pull out a great bow and suddenly their synergy kind of falls apart a little bit. Now they're still enduring and they're still, you know, L1ing. It's what they're born to do. But it's just so funny how such a little thing like that can change up the dynamic. It gets them separated, and now we know we can outtrade this guy because, well, I got twin power stance straight swords, and his endure is gone. It is that simple. But thank you for joining me today. I had a lot of fun playing with this build. Maybe you'll have fun playing with a build like it soon. I hope I've inspired you. Either way, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. It's good to be back making videos again. And now I will taper off and let you enjoy this clean kill with the curved greatsword, jumping light into piercing fang, and a happy new year. Bye-bye now.